The NBA Draft Lottery just went down last night, and the big story of the night was that we found out who won the rights to draft highly coveted prospect Victor Wembanyama. Of course, there is a ton of tantalizing talent in this year's class outside of him, and teams all throughout the lottery will have their hands full deciding who to take, and after the order was made official last night, some teams were incredibly happy, while others were not so much. This is obviously the perfect time to drop another mock draft for my monthly mock draft series, so that's exactly what we're here to do today, going through the full lottery, hypothesizing who each team may have their eyes on drafting at this point in time. Before we start though, it turns out a good amount of you watching right now aren't even subscribed to the channel, so if you enjoy the content, consider hitting the subscribe button, as not only does it help out a ton, but it also very much appreciated. Now with that being said, let's begin. Starting things off with the big winners of the night, the number 1 pick belongs to the San Antonio Spurs, and they will be taking Victor Wembanyama from France. Not much else really needs to be said here. All 14 teams went into the lottery praying that they would land the number 1 pick, and the Spurs won the grand prize to be able to draft the player who some are calling a once-in-a-generation talent. The Spurs are also notorious for their ability to develop talent at a high level, so the Spurs also seem like one of the more ideal landing spots for Wembanyama anyway, as he'll now have one of the best coaches in the history of the game overseeing his growth for the foreseeable future. Next up with the second pick, the Charlotte Hornets select Brandon Miller from Alabama. The Hornets landing the second pick actually creates a bit of a conundrum, at least from my perspective. I personally believe that Scoot Henderson is easily the second best player in this draft, but the issue is that the Hornets already have a franchise point guard in LaMelo Ball, so I do see a world where they prefer Miller's fit on the wing alongside LaMelo, rather than doubling up in the backcourt taking Henderson. Miller is a tremendous two-way talent as a shooter and a defender that can make things happen though, so it's not the worst issue to run into in the world here. Next up with the third pick, the Portland Trailblazers select Scoot Henderson from G League Ignite. The Blazers leapfrogged a few teams to land in the top 3, and they would be overjoyed to have Scoot Henderson fall into their laps. The Blazers' off-season plans could shake up the league this summer because being able to land Scoot Henderson potentially provides them with the perfect excuse to finally commit to a rebuild, and if that becomes the case, then Damian Lillard may finally be on the move, which would provide them with even more assets to build for the future. Scoot Henderson is an out-of-this-world athlete and a tough shot maker who I think is comparable to guys like Ja Morant and prime Russell Westbrook, so he's definitely the kind of player that you can easily structure a rebuild around. Up next with the fourth pick, the Houston Rockets select Cason Thompson from Overtime Elite. The Rockets were one of the teams bumped down the order unfortunately, but Cason Thompson does provide them with a big boost in an area of need, while still being the best player available. The Rockets' experiment with Kevin Porter Jr. at point guard probably needs to end sooner rather than later, and Cason Thompson has a natural playmaking instinct and ability to create for those around him, along with his impressive size and outrageously bouncy athleticism to fit right into their lineup and make an impact. Next, with the fifth pick, the Detroit Pistons select Cam Whitmore from Villanova. The Pistons were probably the biggest losers of the whole lottery, as they had the worst record in the league this season and dropped completely out of the top 4. Nevertheless, the show must go on, and at this spot, I really like Whitmore's fit on this young Pistons team. Right now, the Pistons have their backcourt of the future in Cade Cunningham and Jaden Ivey, and they also have a ton of young big men in their rotation, so adding Whitmore into the mix on the wing bolsters an area of need. Whitmore is ready to get out and run and would greatly benefit from Cade Cunningham's playmaking ability. He's a strong and powerful athlete who has a natural feel for scoring the basketball inside, and his perimeter shooting steadily improved over the course of the season, which is a good sign going into the draft. Next up with the sixth pick, the Orlando Magic select Ausar Thompson from Overtime Elite. Again, this is another really strong fit between team and prospect, while also taking advantage of grabbing the best player available at the spot. Ausar, like his brother Eamon, is an outrageous athlete who will wow you with his bounce, but he's also a terrific scorer of the basketball. He has the size to defend multiple positions, he's coming off of an MVP season in the Overtime Elite League, and as long as he continues continues to improve his shooting stroke, his upside is as high as anybody's this year. Up next, with the 7th pick, the Indiana Pacers select Jarace Walker from Houston. Walker is arguably the most versatile prospect in this class as a forward who can competently defend multiple positions, operate as a secondary playmaker who makes good reads out of the post, and spaces the floor well enough. He's a strong player who can battle with bigs, inside, and smoothly operate around the craftier forwards, and his ability to provide a jack-of-all-trades type of skill set is definitely valuable at the NBA level. Next up, with the 8th pick, the Washington Wizards select Anthony Black from Arkansas. Black is a big-bodied lead guard with terrific court vision and playmaking instincts, and with all of the guys on the Wizards roster that have a score-first mentality, they need someone with Black's skill set to balance things out. Tall playmakers are becoming more valuable than ever, with Josh Giddey being a recent example of an emerging player cut from the same cloth, so this is another fit I really like. Up next, with the 9th pick, the Utah Jazz select Gradey Dick from Kansas. If there's one thing that the Jazz value, it's guys who can shoot the rock, and after nearly overachieving their way into the play-in tournament this year, they've proven that they have a good foundation. Gradey Dick is arguably the best shooter in the draft class this year, who demonstrated an uncanny ability to find good looks from deep and cash in on them at about a 40% clip. Next up, with the 10th pick, the Dallas Mavericks select Taylor Hendricks from UCF. The Mavericks can now breathe a big sigh of relief as they held on to their top 10 protected pick, and with it, they need to target versatility and defense. Enter Taylor Hendricks, who has soared up draft boards throughout the course of the season because of his ability to be exactly that. Hendricks can defend multiple different positions very well, he can cause havoc on that end, and he's about a 40% shooter from 3, so he can keep the floor spaced for Luka Doncic as well. Up next, with the 11th pick, the Orlando Magic, who own the Chicago Bulls pick, select Jordan Hawkins from Connecticut. The Magic have done a solid job putting together the core of young talent that they have, but at the moment they're missing players that can reliably space the floor, so bringing in Jordan Hawkins is a good place to start addressing that. Hawkins made more three-pointers than any other projected prospect in this class this season, and he knocked them down at about a 39% clip, so his ability to shoot the basketball after leading his UConn team to the title has seen his stock rise a ton. Next up, with the 12th pick, the Oklahoma City Thunder select Cason Wallace from Kentucky. The Thunder may be a young rebuilding team, but they showed this season that they're ready to win right now. Cason Wallace has a toughness about him that I think fits what the Thunder are going for, and his unselfishness and defensive versatility make him the kind of prospect that can come in and make a difference in the rotation immediately from day one. Up next, with the 13th pick, the Toronto Raptors select Nick Smith Jr. from Arkansas. Smith entered the season viewed as a potential top 5 pick in the draft, and quite simply, his season did not go quite as planned. He struggled mightily in March Madness after dealing with injuries throughout most of the season, but I still think there's a player here worth taking a swing on, and he fits the type of prospect that Raptors tend to go for. With Fred VanVleet possibly leaving this offseason, they have a hole at the point guard position, and Smith is a lead guard that is very comfortable creating his own shot off the dribble while also possessing a 6'9" wingspan, and if there's one thing about the Raptors, they love guys with long wingspans. And finally, the last pick of the lottery belongs to the New Orleans Pelicans, and with it, they select Keyonte George from Baylor. When Zion Williamson was out, the Pelicans' offense lacked much substance outside of CJ McCollum and Brandon Ingram, and by drafting George, they get a guy with a natural feel for scoring the basketball, who at first can maybe start as a 6th man off the bench to ignite their bench unit, and as he develops, could be a key cog for them for years to come. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below who you want your favorite team to draft this year. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.